Let's jump straight to it. If you'd like to make yourself sufficiently comfortable for the experience of listening at length, or adopt a posture that you consider to be attuned to the art of meditation. And then we might like to close our eyes. And in closing our eyes and cutting off our sense of the seeing of objects, there's a somewhat increased sense of hearing. What's immediately apparent is the sound of a voice coming and going, offering words, direction. And as we sit in this way, let's allow for the surrendering, or the sacrifice, or the evaporation of the sense of our day. Allow for our attention to sink away from the mechanisms of thinking, feeling, sensations in the body, and the screen of perception. So let's notice the breathing function, the utility of life-giving oxygen, the movement of the stomach as it rises and falls, sensation of our feet on the floor, and as this voice lists interchangeable objects, things, feet, stomach, thinking, feeling, breathing. Let's notice that in which these objects are changing. Our usual word for this is awareness. Our loftier term is consciousness. So notice the presence of the sense of being a person, or that stance from which you know, or are the knower of, a life that we all call my life. So here we are as a distinct subject, eyes closed, listening to a voice that is hopefully pointing us away from the listed objects as we sink our attention into itself. And let's, for a brief period, allow for stillness, the stillness that we fundamentally are at the back of, or the rear of, experience. Let's allow for stillness to simply know itself. So just be. And this very being, and the knowing of my being, we might call the space in which the thought I constantly arises. Numerous hundreds of times a day. And the world that we inhabit, that we know, arrives for us through our senses. We see, hear, taste, touch, and know people, places, and things. And our reference for the knowing of such things is a seemingly unique stance from which we experience the world, or we might say my world. And we take ourselves to be a distinct subject. We might use our name, we might say, I think, I feel, I sense, I perceive, I remember, I hope. And this I stance, this subject called me, constantly relates to endless interchangeable objects, people we might have relationships with, they may be strangers, places, our home, our streets, our workplaces, sunshine islands, desperate streets, the world we inhabit. And the many things that make up our external world, possessions around the home, tools for working, resources, and this distinct subject and its related world of objects make up the external experience of what we might all call my life. And governed by the influence of our upbringing, our family, our schooling, our peer groups, our youth, our experiences that we enjoyed and loved, our experiences that we endured and loathed. Every experience prior to this specific one has shaped this very experience. So everything apparently before right now has led us to know right now in the way we are seeming to know right now. Here we are. Here we all are. Simply seated, still and listening, experiencing a voice describing things that keep changing as the description and the narrative spoken seems to move forward. Now let's take a pause and breathe and notice the function of breathing and rest in that breath from this narrative, this story thus far. We've covered a lot of territory. We've mapped the significant terrain. We've seemingly mapped in a short space of time our entire existence. Yet we are the knower of this next breath. As a movement of the present, or as a movement of the space in which we can all acknowledge I am. And to a large extent, everything that has gone before this I am that we know is no more than a list of words passing through the present, describing events and times and dates and places, faces, joy and suffering, and dark spaces. But they are now words happening in the present. And they are, in fact, never any more than that. Yet the subject we call I is constantly referencing this past, apparent past, in order to no longer suffer, no longer have complex and difficult experiences, and to capture instead positive experiences, and ultimately to avoid suffering and to bring about one thing. Nearly 8 billion people on the planet, all day, every day, spend all of our time trying to secure, in the moment, happiness. Why wouldn't we? So, as a distinct subject relating to a world of objects, we are seekers of the same thing, happiness. And many of us, if not all of us, have known numerous experiences of unhappiness. In fact, in our efforts to seek happiness, we have often encountered the very opposite. Or with the current collection of objects in our lives, people, places, our homes, or other homes, or our jobs, some of us bring us great happiness. We've all loved people that have brought us great happiness, or been loved by people that have brought us great happiness. And soon and often and sometimes these same people, places and things have brought up in us cataclysmic unhappiness. Of course, they are not to blame for our unhappiness, but they may be somewhat accountable. We may have all known relationships, and our relationships will have changed. Our relationships to people will have changed. The places we have known have changed. Our peer groups and our friends may have changed. These external objects, all interchangeable, have sometimes brought us seasons of happiness and experiences of unhappiness. This is simply the nature of things. We can see this in the relationships in our external lives. Unhappy homes, unhappy families. And as we sit collectively, once more we see that these are merely concepts being pointed to by the application of a language that we understand, and maybe some of that described gives rise to thoughts and feelings about these things. And even the thoughts and feelings are interchangeable. They may be changing as the voice continues to describe external objects. So if we draw away from the narrative of a description of life or the human experience, we see that our thoughts and feelings about these external objects are also interchangeable. Thoughts and feelings are in fact things. No sadness has ever endured, no matter how much it might seem to have overwhelmed at the time. No joy, no ecstasy, no bliss has endured unendingly, unceasingly. Thoughts and feelings rise and fall. Sensations in the body, pain, pleasure, rise and fall. So the subject relating to a world of objects, from thoughts and feelings, sensations, to people, places and things. The subject and the objects have not once known a constant experience. In fact, if we really look at it, the subject, the person, the identity, the personality we take ourselves to be, even that hasn't stayed the same. So our external life has never once stayed the same. Our internal life has never once stayed the same. But prior to that even, the personality, the person we were when we were children, the child turned into the teenager changed into the 20-something. The personality, the likes, the dislikes, the preferences, the geography, the map of me has changed. So even the subject is an object, if you can get with that. like once more in the turning of a screw at the rising and falling of the next breath. Notice the presence of the space in which all these concepts has risen and fallen. Or there's a space in which the I thought arises. Or more refined still, if we reduce down from that, the familiar word is awareness. Ask yourself, am I aware? And in seeking to discover the answer to the consideration, am I aware, we turn to awareness and acknowledge this awareness with awareness. When we hear the question, am I aware, we look, we take a glance, and with no distance to travel, no book, no school, no teacher, merely the application of the consideration itself, am I aware? Awareness, or a loftier term, consciousness, beingness, isness, the very isness of being, is readily and obviously apparent. Let's abide, let's stay with that sense of being. Notice the motion of the breathing function as life breathes itself in and out of us without our will. Breathing is happening to us just as life at this fundamental level is happening to us. We are not doing it, it is being done to us. And if we surrender the faculty, the utility of language, although I'm using language to point past language, so setting aside thinking, thought, thinker, personality, set aside the me program of life, and use breathing alone as the only outward facing function. And the sense of beingness itself, or awareness, and the knowing of awareness, without the use of words to answer the question. Look to see if anything's missing without words from right now. So don't answer the question. Notice if in your direct experience you lack anything, again without words, without the use of feelings. Do we need to add anything to this experience to improve it? Is it painful without the use of words and feelings? Is the experience you're currently knowing without the use of words, is it something you're doing any better or worse than anyone else? Do you need compare? Right now with another person's right now? Or is this, capital T, complete or whole, capital W, just fine as it is. Allow attention to rest in itself alone. So remove your attention from anything and be with the experience of stillness, knowing itself. Any effort to improve this direct experience takes us away from this direct experience. Here we are. So once we reduce back from or prior to thought, feeling, sensation, memory, personality, identity, imagined future, and allow ourselves to rest in our own being. We discover in the stillness that we are prior to thought, peaceful and happy, precisely in the way we hope to secure by rearranging the objects of our life. We constantly seek happiness as a subject in the objects of our external life. We change people, jobs, homes, possessions. We change our identities, our hairstyles, our clothes, our fashions. And we move things in order to feel okay about being me. And here we are using words to point beyond words, we might say, but really prior to all words, before even the I thought or the referencing of me, abandoning language and feeling, and noticing the very pace that passes the thinking mind and the feeling structure and all its previous influence, and uncover the ready presence of happiness and peace as our true nature, as our very being, and discover that our effort to find peace and happiness is the very bondage that prohibits us realizing happiness, and peace is what we are. In fact, this space, this beingness, is the same beingness we knew as infants and as children and as teenagers and 20-somethings. And the personality, the identity that's constantly changed and is governed by thoughts and feelings and the world we inhabit that we're trying to effect so we can think and feel positively. Our identification, our identity as a thinking and feeling and sensing personality in a given life is where we have known suffering. Paradoxically, by our very search for happiness as that identity. Before such an identity, personality, and thought and feeling, happiness and peace are not simply who we are, but what we are.